Hello, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand, and thanks for joining me as we look again at today's culture through the lens of the Bible. And today, I'm going to make an attempt to explain stupid. So let me start with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Well, it appears to me that stupid is all around me. I'm not sure if it seems to be growing in an epidemic proportion, but look, I know it's a medical disorder for some, and I'm not referring to them, but others whose actions and thoughts, well, they just leave you wondering. Hey, but first let me define stupid according to the good old trusty Oxford Dictionary. Stupid, it says, is defined as having or showing a great lack of intelligence or common sense. Other synonyms replace the word stupid as foolish, brainless, ignorant, unintelligent, and dense. So what category would you put someone who would take their family to the beach to watch a tsunami wave hit a coastline? A few years back on One News, there was an item about a possible tsunami hitting the city of Auckland. It showed families heading onto the beach. They stopped a young mother who was carrying a baby in her arms while trying to corral her toddlers, and they asked her why she'd brought the family down to the beach. Now, her response, and I haven't made this up, was, "Oh, I thought the kids would never see a wave this big before, or maybe again in their lifetime." Now, that response had me doubting. Was Charles Darwin wrong? I mean, was this an example of the survival of the fittest? Well, the thing is that we're all just as guilty of being brainless and not doing stupid, foolish things, not once in our lives, but every day. None of us are immune from stupidity once in a while. Hey, you're in the car with the kids, emergency service vehicles pass you. The kids are excited with all the lights and siren. So what do? You follow it to see what was happening, not giving a thought that they may be responding to the end of someone's life in some horrifying manner that will leave a scar on your kids' minds, or maybe, hey, somebody's house is ablaze. So many people like our young mum at the beach, they're so keen to see the end of their world that they don't give any thought as to the consequences. The Oxford Dictionary defines stupid as a lack of common sense, something which is in short supply amongst some generations. Now, common sense is when someone, for example, from the civil defence or another emergency service, warns you something's going to happen and you need to evacuate your house. Well, that's what you do. You take some action. And action is not saying, "Oh, thank you, dear," and then going and putting a jug on for another cup of tea. I've often asked every time I see disaster on the news and countless reports of people who had ignored warnings, now, why should emergency services put their lives at risk to rescue stupid, ignorant people? Well, go back to the news. You see on television, you read online, you hear on the radio. I know a lot of it's trivial, but somewhere in there is a story telling you that things are not right on planet Earth. Now, over the last week, I've read 2 articles from both sides of the world, pretty much on the same subject, but from different angles. The first was about what countries in the NATO alliance are doing, and it listed them as Europe is in crisis with Ukraine. Well, 3 years after Russia started to expand its military into Ukraine, Europe's finally taking notice. US President Donald Trump in his first term in office, which was well before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, was warning European NATO leaders not to rely on the US for assistance if things were to go pear-shaped. That's my words. But did they listen to the warning? Is that why today they're scrambling, trying to put together a European army? Many times last year I mentioned the drums of war were beating and they were getting louder every day. But what are we actually seeing is a convergence of Bible prophecy in regard to the end times. It truly is happening. And when Jesus was describing the signs, he illustrated this realization as a fig tree. Matthew 24:32. It says, "Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things that he just described, you know that it is near, right at the door. Now, the senior pastor at my church raised my eyebrows a few Sundays back when he mentioned that everything that we're witnessing in our culture, hey, we've seen it before. We've seen it throughout history. But it's this kind of ignorance taught from the pulpit that I so often rail against. Unlike him, I won't be heading to the beach because what eschatologists, that's people who study end times prophecy, are witnessing is a convergence of all these things that Jesus spoke about. Matthew 24 put it, truly, I tell you this, generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. I mentioned that I saw two stories, and the second one was from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the ABC, which chastised the current leadership of Australia, Albert Albanese, and its contender, Roger Dutton, because of their ignorance, or should it be arrogance, that they are heading for a minority government, concentrating the country on what the ABC puts it, heading into another small, dreary cost of living election. The article's thrust was that the world's history is at a turning point and the world is knocking on the door of Australia. It's knocking on New Zealand's door and every other country in the world. It's not time for the governments of this world to make another cup of tea. The warning signs are there. The ABC article listed just 1 day's worth of crisis points in the world, and it was staggering. Oh yeah, look, school lunches are important in New Zealand, but the main issue here is let's not be complacent. We're living in a rapidly changing world. The warnings are there. The drums are beating. There are warning signs that things are happening in the world. You know, Jesus told his disciples to stay awake, stay on the watch, let no man deceive you. Really, are we as a population that stupid, foolish, brainless, ignorant, unintelligent and dense, lacking in common sense not to know, or is it we just don't want to know? Noah and his family, they spent decades building an ark. Now, people around them could see it. They taunted, they jeered, they mocked Noah and his family. They even called him foolish. Well, the account of Noah and his family has been passed down in folklore through every generation across the world. You know, there is not one ethnicity in the world that doesn't have a historical reference of the flood. Well, the question is, was Noah foolish? Was Lot and his family foolish when they fled from their city when Sodom and Gomorrah was being destroyed? Were the people who fled the city when they saw the signs that Jesus mentioned of the coming destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD by the Roman army? You know, the Bible has many references to foolish people, but as I wrap this up, Psalm 74:18 gives us at least some comfort that we're not the first to be thought foolish for warning people, because it says for us that we should remember how the enemy has mocked you. Lord, how foolish people have reviled your name. Let us not ignore the warnings. Let us not be distracted as we hear history calling and the world crying out for action. Hey, thanks for joining us here at Christian Voice New Zealand as we look again at today's culture through the lens of the Bible. If you're interested, there are links to the two articles I referred to in this discourse. They're down on the description page below. But as always, if you feel like you would like to financially contribute to our work, details can be found on our website, Christian Voice New Zealand. Don't forget, comments and subscribe if you haven't already done so. But let me leave you with these words from the book of Philemon, where it says, "May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with your spirit." Hey, until next time.